Okay, so this is a picture of a human karyotype. A karyotype is just like a little map or a chart mapping out all of the chromosomes of a particular species. In this case, we're looking at the species of human, Homo sapien, and this is our karyotype. As you can see, we have one for male and one for female, and there's only one difference here. If you look at the male karyotype on chromosome number 23, which is down here, we have one chromosome that's X and one chromosome that's Y, and it's the Y that makes it male. And if you look at the female chromosome number 23 right here, you notice that both chromosomes are X's. So if it has a Y, then it's going to be the male version. And if it doesn't have a Y, it's going to have two X's, and that's going to be the female. And if you notice, there are 23 sets of chromosomes. So here's set 1. See, it says the number 1 right here. Here is pair number 2. These are all in pairs. So here's number 2, and so on and so forth, all the way up to 23. And 23 would be your sex chromosomes, your X and Y, or your X and X. That would be chromosome number 23. So see, we have 23 chromosomes, but there are 23 pairs of chromosomes, which is what makes this 46, which is what gives us 46 total chromosomes, because we have 23 chromosomes from mom and 23 chromosomes from dad. And in the karyotype, these chromosomes are paired up in homologous pairs, which means each set of chromosome, in each set of chromosome, you have one from mom, like in chromosome number 1, this left one would be from mom, and this one would be from dad. So mom's chromosome number 1 is paired up with dad's chromosome number 1. And together, this is a homologous pair. And it's homologous because homologous just means they're similar. These are genes coding for the same thing. They're not identical because mom's gene could have the instructions for blue eyes and dad's gene could have the instructions for brown eyes. So they're not necessarily identical, but they're going to be coding for the same thing, such as eye color. So in the karyotype, each of these pairs is one chromosome from mom and one chromosome from dad. So here's one, in chromosome number 2, this is mom's chromosome number 2, dad's chromosome number 2, and so on and so forth, all the way up through a total of 23 chromosomes. Now, in cell division is, mitosis is only a short period of time in the life cycle of the cell. The cell isn't constantly dividing. It's usually just hanging out doing its thing. And if you look at my little pie chart here, here's the time period. It had split, and so it's spending its life, hanging out, hanging out, until it gets to this little slice of time right here. And just this little slice of time right here is the time that the cell is spent in mitosis, that the cell is dividing. All the rest of the time, it's in what we call interphase. So when it's not dividing, when it's not in mitosis, it's in interphase. And interphase is just, when it's just hanging out doing its thing and growing up. Now, The reason why I showed you that karyotype, the human karyotype back here in these configurations is you notice each of these 23 pairs of chromosomes are these tightly little wound, they look like little pieces of yarn or something. But when the cell is in interphase, when it's not in mitosis, when it's just in interphase, that is not how the chromosomes, those 23 pairs of chromosomes, look. It's when the cell is in interphase, let me draw this. Here is the cell, and inside the cell, here is the nucleus of the cell, because of course the chromosomes are in the nucleus. And instead of, you know, mom's number one, dad's number one, mom's number two, dad's number two, instead of these chromosomes being like this, like we saw in that previous picture, instead of that, when the cell is in interphase and it's not dividing in the mitosis phase, um, these chromosomes are all unwound. If you think of, you know, pieces of yarn and you unravel the yarn into longer little threads, so you would have the mom's chromosome, and it would be just this mess of unwound uh, chromosome material. So those are all the mom's chromosomes, and then we have all the dad's chromosomes. And so you have the mom's and dad's chromosomes all unwound into this big messy uh, ball of string, pretty much. And that is how it normally is in interphase. That's how our chromosomes are normally in interphase. And this is called the chromatid form. So if you hear the word chromatid, all that means is that chromatid, it's the same thing as a chromosome, but chromatid is the word we use to refer to it when it's all unraveled and in this big messy ball in the nucleus. And that's when it's during interphase, when it's not in mitosis. The chromosomes are chromatids. They're in chromatid form. And then when it gets to be in mitosis, that's when, here's another cell, here's the nucleus. When it's during mitosis, that's when these chromosomes all kind of come together and they wind up really tightly and they make these little short segments here. That's just during mitosis. And that's when we call them chromosomes. So otherwise, when they're just in interphase and it's this unwound uh, big ball of mess, that's during interphase, and that is the chromatid form of the chromosomes. Now, interphase, and remember, interphase is not mitosis. Interphase is when the cell is not dividing, it's just growing up. So that's this whole section of time here is the time that the cell spends in interphase. And interphase has three major parts to it. And if you think of it like a child growing up, you have the infant growing into the toddler stage, and then you have the child growing into the adolescent stage, and then you have the adolescent growing into the adult stage. Um, if you can think of it like that, the three major parts to interphase. So the first part is going to be G1, and G, think growth, because during G1, and that's this whole first section of interphase, in G1, it just stands for cell growth, and it's just that the cell has just gotten finished dividing because here's mitosis. I'll put M for mitosis. So the cell has just gotten finished dividing. So it's kind of a baby cell. And so it just grows. It spends some time growing and getting bigger. And then after that, you have the S phase. And when to remember S phase, think sister. And this is the replication phase, actually. The technical name of it is the replication phase. But the reason why it's S for sister is because that's when the chromosomes in their chromatid form are doubled. So each chromosome um, doubles during this S phase. And so now we have two sets of chromosomes, and those are called sister chromatids. So the the double form of the chromosomes are sisters. We refer to them as sisters. So together, the two sister chromatids make one chromosome. There's still just one chromosome, but there are duplicates. There's identical duplicates of it. They're like twins. So like twin sisters. So when you think of the replication phase, think sister for S because that's the name of the phase, the S phase. And that is after the first growth phase. Then finally, we have another growth phase, G2, and of course G again stands for growth, and that's when the cell gets bigger again. And during this time, the sister chromatids also get bigger. Everything in the cell gets bigger, and the sister chromatids start to condense. And let me draw a cell again here. So we have the cell, and we have the nucleus of the cell. I'm drawing the nucleus really big just so my drawing will fit in here. So if we have, say we have all this chromatid, all these chromatids, which is the chromosomes in chromatid form. So the cell has the chromosomes in the chromatid form. It's all unraveled in a big messy ball. So during the S phase, the sister phase, or the replication phase, what happens is that all of these chromatids, they all duplicate, and they all create identical doubles of themselves. And so the doubles are called sister chromatids. So now there's two sets of chromosomes in here, thanks to the S phase, the sister phase. So by the time it gets down to the second growth phase, we have two sets of chromosomes in here, and they start getting bigger during G2. Okay, so that's what happens in between the time periods of mitosis, in between the cell division. As you can see, the cell division is just a very small time period in the life cycle of the cell for mitosis, and the rest of the time the cell is not dividing, it's just growing up.